Let's go to Manchester now, not London, the UK city of Manchester, and catch up with former Foreign Minister Alexander Downer. Alexander, you're in Manchester because of the Conservative Party, the British Conservative Party, having their conference there, and you're going to be speaking on a few panels. I guess the focus there is going to be very much on China, its rise and its belligerence too.
Yes, exactly. There's going to be a lot of discussion today about that and the various panels that I'm on. And one of the panels includes the Defence Minister here in the UK, one of the architects of this AUKUS agreement. So I'm looking forward to it. But yes, the British have taken a much harder line now on China than was the case 2 or 3 years ago when they were having a bit of a love affair with China.
You'd be very pleased about AUKUS, I would presume. It's like putting a bit of steel in the spine of the Anglosphere.
Yes, well, it's exactly what it's doing. And I've often made this point about China and the government in China, not the Chinese people, but its government. This is an absolutely hopeless government. It's completely incompetent. One of the consequences of what its foreign policy has done is rally the world against it and isolate their own country. It's extraordinary. So they've kind of got the British, who have the 5th biggest economy in the world, and they're a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. They've got the British out of bed and got them to line up with the Americans and the Australians in a coalition which is obviously above all designed to balance Chinese power in the Indo-Pacific. So, you know, people are rallying together to balance Chinese power. And of course, the sanctions they've imposed on Australia have outraged the world, and they've done themselves huge damage by imposing those sanctions on Australia.
You had a fascinating piece in the Australian Financial Review in your column where you said that there are big economic problems unfolding in China, especially through its property boom and property collapse. That Evergrande has collapsed. And you're suggesting that the continual rise of China could hit a few speed bumps.
Yes, I don't think it's a straight line trajectory, the rise of China, which is what geopolitical strategists all assume, columnists in Australia, they all assume that. I don't think that's right. And I think, you know, they've handled their economy abominably. One of the things they've done, by the way, is impose sanctions on Australian coal exports. And that's led to huge increases in the price of coal in China, from $86 a tonne to $180 a tonne in 9 months. They've had shortages of coal, they've had power blackouts, and their steel producers are finding the cost of coal so high. The cost of production of steel has gone up by something like $2 billion a week for the whole of their steel industry. So that and their mismanagement of the property sector, which has led to the 2nd biggest property company tottering on the verge of collapse. And you'd have to say they've been managing their economy very badly in the last couple of years.
Now, what about their military provocations? How worried should we be about the recent sorties of Chinese fighters into Taiwanese airspace?
Well, just a continuation of provocation, which is, in that particular case, built around their National Day at the end of last week. But they're, of course, continuing to assert that Taiwan is part of Chinese sovereignty, something, by the way, we all accept. But these military provocations in the environment where they've turned so much of the world, particularly the Western world, against them, they are very unwise, and they would be much wiser to tone down their foreign policy, tone down their military policy, and concentrate on trying to get their economy working better than going into adventures like these flights over Taiwanese territory.
But there's just no sign of a moderation of the language or even engaging with a country like Australia at a ministerial level.
Well, here's the problem with a dictatorship. You don't have debate in a dictatorship. So if the Australian government, the Australian government does pursue, of course, a range of different policies which are constantly being debated. I mean, the opposition always puts an alternative view, and then there are commentators like yourself who argue about what the government's been doing. It's healthy. The trouble with China is everyone just accepts what Xi Jinping says, And what's this about Xi Jinping? The man's a genius, is he? He never makes a mistake. Everything he does is right.
Yeah.
Well, you've seen from their economic management as well as their foreign policy that everything he does is not right. It's not subject to debate. It's not subject to criticism. And the consequences is they're just entrenching themselves in bad policy because the people around him are frightened of the dictator.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Alexander. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.